Andres de AA Sports with big news regarding women's football in Mexico and the Mexico women's national team. This has been news that has been honestly kind of overshadowed by the Gold Cup, as well as the Liga Expansión lawsuit and the women's national team games versus Uruguay and Colombia that happened as well during this summer. But this is some big news and some very, very great news for Mexico and Mexican football. It looks like La Selección Femenil de Mexico has qualified for the 2031 FIFA Women's World Cup. According to multiple sources a few days prior to the Gold Cup, this is coming from TUDN, Fox Deportes, as well as The Athletic and ESPN in the United States. And an announcement from the Mexican Football Federation itself during its meeting between Liga MX club owners and the Federation that Mexico will be a co-host of the 2031 Women's World Cup. The Mexican Football Federation first announced this news as a bullet point in a press release following the Liga MX, the club ownership meeting group. This comes after Mexico and the U.S. They actually withdrew their attempt to host the 2027 World Cup. So this news comes after that to instead refocus their bid to host the tournament in 2031. With that, the United States, this time without Mexico, submitted their bid to host the 2031 World Cup, with the host country bids limited to only CONCACAF and African countries. And it turns out the United States was the only bid that met the eligibility criteria, with other CONCACAF countries being eligible to host games should the U.S. be willing to co-host. Well, at the end of May, in the press release following that meeting with the Mexican Federation and the club owners, the FMF explained that, and this is a quote from sources from TUDN, the owners were informed that the 2031 Women's World Cup will be held in Mexico and the United States with equal number of games between the two venues. So that is what the club owners and press were told, according to the Mexican Football Federation. And obviously, all these news outlets reached out for comments from U.S. Soccer, the U.S. Soccer Federation. But U.S. Soccer has not commented or responded to these questions. However, when it was announced that the United States was the only bid for 2031, FIFA President Gianni Infantino hinted that it would potentially be co-hosted, and U.S. Soccer at that time also issued this statement. Quote, "We are excited about the opportunity to co-host the 2031 FIFA Women's World Cup, and in collaboration with our CONCACAF partners, are committed to delivering a tournament that leaves a lasting legacy, one that elevates women's soccer across the world and inspires future generations of players and fans." So, based on the U.S. Football Federation's comments then in early April, it is the closest thing to saying that it will be co-hosted, and is indeed lining up with these reports and the FMF that Mexico looks like they will get to host the tournament for the first time in their history. And it could not come at a better time, in my opinion, as this Mexico women's national team has really, really improved, become more competitive, and is building up with very, very bright prospects. Little is known outside of this, and that should it be co-hosted, the games will be split equally among the host countries. Unlike the 2026 World Cup, where obviously most of the games will be in the U.S., the United States, who is the main representative of this bid, has also explored the idea of also having some of the Women's World Cup matches in Costa Rica and Jamaica. However, nothing has gained traction or been confirmed on those ideas. Right now, though, it looks like it will be only the United States and Mexico. No potential venues have been announced as part of the 2031 bid yet. However, according to FIFA's current regulations for a 32-team World Cup, the tournament must have a minimum of 8 stadiums, of which at least 5 were already existing venues. And in terms of capacity, stadiums would have minimum seating capacities of 20,000 people for most matches, 40,000 for semifinal matches, and 65,000 for the opening match and the final. However, the 2031 Women's World Cup will again be like the 2026 World Cup, as it will be the first Women's World Cup tournament with 48 teams. So surely additional changes will be made to accommodate that expansion to 48 teams. With that in mind, regarding the regulations and standards for the stadiums, with it already being renovated for 2026 and such a historic stadium, you have to imagine that Estadio Azteca en la Ciudad de Mexico will be one of the host stadiums. It has the football culture, the history, and what better stadium to be included for Mexico in hosting their first Women's World Cup in history. Should Mexico co-hosting be made official, which is what it looks like right now, given FIFA's rules state that the opening game and final game stadiums must have a minimum capacity of 65,000, and that the US has already hosted the Women's World Cup multiple times and will hold most matches of the 2026 World Cup, including the final. With that, if Estadio Azteca doesn't get to host the 2031 Women's World Cup final and the bigger games with its history as a football stadium, I will lose my mind. If it is US and Mexico, Mexico should host the opening game and final game, and Estadio Azteca should host some of the big group stage games, including at least one for Mexico, maybe all of Mexico's group stage games. That atmosphere would be incredible. Again, it isn't official, but based on the information leaked and given in press conferences so far, it does look like Mexico and the US will co-host in 2031. And in that case, this is what should happen. And Mexico should be absolutely ecstatic about it. The atmosphere for La Selección Femenil, especially in a sold-out Estadio Azteca, would be historic and just nothing short of awesome and incredible for women's football. Andres from AA Sports. It's surprising that this hasn't been talked about more among Mexican media and sports networks. But again, it's likely because most Mexico fans were thinking about the Gold Cup. But as the official announcement gets closer and this is officially confirmed by all parties, you better believe Mexican sports media will go crazy about this, as they should. I can't wait to see Mexico host the Women's World Cup, especially with Mexico's team on the rise. But that will be all for this video. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can stay updated on all the Mexico national team news, along with other sports content I post on this channel. Thanks for watching. 2031, Vamos Mexico.